This is National Geographic Weekend. I'm Boyd Matson. Time now for Wild Chronicles, that part of the show where I share some stories of my own travels for National Geographic. And let me begin this segment by asking you, what time is it, boys and girls? That's right, it is fall time. The time of year when most people think, now let's go look at the leaves on the trees as they change color. We want to see those beautiful oranges and reds and yellows as the leaves go from green to that really colorful stage before they disappear altogether for the winter. But that's not the only place you can go in the fall. There are many places, and fortunately National Geographic has stepped into the breach to give you some ideas if you can't think of anything other than fall leaf tours. It's called Our 4 Seasons of Travel, a new book from National Geographic, and where we suggest places you might want to visit at specific times of the year, because frankly sometimes they're just better than others. And I happened to write one of the stories in this book for the fall section. And it's a trip to see the ice bears. And this is the perfect time. We've just come out of Halloween, and the first time I went to Churchill, Manitoba, Canada, it was over a Halloween. And I went out with the little trick-or-treaters who had to go with armed guards. Not because of what they thought they might find behind the door of some houses in Churchill. It was on the way to the houses. The polar bears. This is the polar bear capital of the world. Every fall, the polar bears come in off the tundra, gather right at Churchill, waiting for the ice to freeze on Hudson Bay. That's the first place it freezes. And then when the ice freezes, they can go out and start fattening up on the seals. They catch them when the seals come out of the little breathing holes. And tourists come from all over the world to see polar bears. You are guaranteed, not often you can guarantee that you're going to see a wild animal, but in Churchill they can guarantee in the fall you will see polar bears, and that's why it's the best time to go. And they have these big tundra buggies, can roll out over the frozen tundra, so these buggies allow you to drive over to get to where the bears are. And the best part is that the bears are congregated in groups that they wouldn't normally be in. They just wouldn't get close to each other like they do during this time waiting for the ice to freeze. And what that means, when you get a group of males together, you're going to get some wrestling. And the bears like to play fight. And so I've got some incredible shots of bears wrestling and play fighting, and we'll put up a little video so you can see this and see why it's so entertaining to watch polar bears this time of year at Churchill. But while I was there, the first trip, I met a bear biologist, Malcolm Ramsey, who at that time was the world's foremost polar bear expert. And I went out with him as we flew in a helicopter, and he darted a couple of polar bears, and then we landed beside him to do some research on them. It was measuring skull size and body fat and taking a blood sample. And all the while we're working on the bear's head and weighing them to see how much weight they've lost over their non-eating period during the summer. While we're working on the head, Malcolm says to me, you know, Mark there is the world's foremost expert in polar bear posteriors. And at that point I looked back at Mark, who has his arm up the polar bear's posterior, up to the elbow, pulling out a stool sample. And I thought at that point, really, there's a competition for this title? There are other people you can rate. Who's in second place? And that's when I realized I never wanted to be that much of an expert about anything. But if you want to see polar bears, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to get that close. You don't have to put your arm up the polar bear's rear end, but you can see them right up next to you from these tundra buggies. So if you're looking at a fall trip that's something different than the leaves, check out Churchill, Canada. That wraps up the show for this time. Thanks to my producer, Justin O'Neill. I'm Boyd Matson. Be sure and tune in next time for another radio adventure.